this is fascinating. When you stop, I mean, we've heard this for, ever since we were this big or smaller. But God literally reached into Adam's body that he had created, maybe only hours before this, and he released one of those ribs, and he pulled it out. And then God took that bone from Adam, and he went over, and he started gathering dust together around that bone, and he formed Eve. And he brought her to Adam, and Adam was, of course, he was awake by now, and Adam accepted her immediately. Not because he had anything to gauge it by. He couldn't compare her to any other female because there were none. She was the first. And yet he accepted her, and he immediately sensed what had happened. I don't know if he sensed that he was missing something, and he realized that it was in her. I don't know how he knew it, because God put him to sleep before he took it out. But he said, "This is now bone of my bones and flesh of my flesh." Adam understood who she was, but he accepted her immediately, not because of anything except who she was standing next to. He knew he could trust his Creator, and his Creator brought her to him, and he accepted her. And that is really critical. It's important for us to understand that when we get married, or when we got married, God brought us together. And we can accept that. It's a gift from God. I was telling the kids today, we were talking about pretending and how you become what you pretend. And I told them a story I'd heard about this woman who she was in a really bad relationship. And she wanted to hurt her husband. She wanted to divorce him, but she wanted to do it in such a way that it would hurt. And so she went to a counselor, not to resolve issues, but to find out what's the best way that I can divorce him and make it hurt. And the counselor kind of looked at her, and he thought for a couple minutes, and he said, he said, "I've got the perfect idea." He said, "Here's what I want you to do. I want you to go home, and I want you to pretend that he is the greatest husband in the world. I want you to say nothing but positive things about him, build him up as though he's the best thing that ever happened in your life. And he said, I want you to treat him that way for about a month. And then you walk in one day and you drop the bombshell on him, I'm going to divorce you. It'll destroy him. It'll devastate him." And she thought, "Oh, yeah, that's what I'm going to do. I'm going to get him." And so she goes home. And the month passes, and there's no phone call to make an appointment. And another 2 weeks pass. It's 6 weeks now. It's 8 weeks, and the counselor has heard nothing from this woman. And he's at the grocery store, and he runs into her in the grocery store, and he says, "Hey, I thought you were coming back." She said, "You would not believe. I am married to the most wonderful man in the world. We have the greatest relationship. There is no way I'd want to divorce him." What made the difference? It was the fact you can't trust your feelings. You got to act what you know is right. And then the rest comes along. Adam knew that Eve was exactly what he needed, and he acted accordingly. And that's what we need to do. We need to act on what we know God has already provided for us. So, we talked about that. Why did God put Adam to sleep? In order for us as guys to accept what God has given to us, we've got to surrender our ego. You know the little one, and you want to help the little one, and what do they say? "No, I do it myself. I do it myself." That's most of us guys. Do it myself. I don't need anybody. We've got to surrender our ego and be willing to say, "I need you." Say it to your wife. I tell her all the time that I need her, and she knows that. I'd be a basket case without her. And guys, you need to let your wife know that. But sometimes it's a little humbling to have to look at someone and say, "I need you. I need you in my life." But we need to. Independence has got to be surrendered, And we must recognize our need of our wives, or the relationship's not going to work. It's not going to work. You cannot be a relationship drill sergeant and have a relationship that works. There's got to be a fact, I need you. We need each other. And Adam and Eve both knew that they need each other. Now, there's a quote from Matthew Henry. I'd heard this quote. I wasn't sure who had said it, but I did find it. Women were created from the rib of man to be beside him, not from his head to top him, nor from his feet to be trampled by him, but from under his arm to be protected by him, and near to his heart to be loved by him. And I would also suggest that the majority of ladies are not content until they have found themselves back in that comfortable place once again, right by the side of their husband. That's what God created. That's what he intended. And I think we really need to. Now, it doesn't mean if you're single that you're insufficient. No, not by any means. It doesn't. The Bible makes plain that there are some people that find that connection with him. And they're freer to love him than what those who have the human relationship are. So if you're not married and you're single, don't let something like this upset you. It's okay. You let God be your connection. Let him be your helper in your life. Okay, a little bit more here. Okay. The original intention, again, was to leave and cleave. This is why a man leaves his father and mother, is united to his wife, and they become one flesh. This is at the end of chapter 2 now. Adam and his wife were both naked, and they felt no shame. And this is not just a physical thing. It was an emotional. There was nothing hidden. How many of you know that a lot of times people keep secrets? People keep secrets. I don't think Adam and Eve had any secrets. I think that word implies not only the fact that they didn't have a physical covering, but emotionally they didn't have a covering. They were open. They were wide open with each other, all prior to the fall of man. So there's a few principles about marriage that I want to share with you. First off, marriage is the most important of all human relationships. Sometimes what happens is when we're in the child-rearing years, instead of our focus being on each other, our focus then becomes on the children, and we think, okay, I need to pour my life into my kids, and I need to give and give and give. But what gives children security more than anything else is not the fact that mom or dad love them. Studies have shown that what gives the children security is knowing that mom and dad love each other. And they know that they're first in each other's lives. It is the most important relationship of all human relationships. More so than father-child, mother-son, daughter, whatever, to your children, it is the most important. It is a joining of two lives into one. One of the concepts that is important to understand is that every marriage, every union has a purpose. And that's hard sometimes to grasp, but there's a reason why God brought you and your spouse together. And sometimes if you can discover that, and maybe things are a little rocky, but if you can discover the why, things begin to work right, and they begin to move forward. There's a purpose. I was sharing with a couple, I don't know, it's probably been about 6 months ago. I was sharing with them about the purpose in their lives, in their marriage, and trying to help them discover what that was. And they said, well, what is your purpose in your marriage? That's a fair question. One of our purposes in marriage is to be an encouragement to others as a couple, and also to take in children. Gwen and George relate to this purpose. That's one of the purposes of their marriage. And one of ours is, most people go through an empty nest. Those of you that haven't gotten there, you'll get there sooner or later. You'll enjoy it. We had empty nests for maybe,
No, we haven't.
what, a week, 2 weeks?
No, we haven't.
Not really. And right after our daughter got married, we had somebody come and live with us, and it's been constant almost, and then we had a pastor friend of ours that lived with us for 4 years, and he's the pastor over at Penn Forest. He was hilarious. He lived downstairs. We remodeled the basement, and we'd hear him come in at night, and nobody's down there, and we'd hear his voice ring out through the apartment. "Honey, I'm home!" He's a little crazy, but God took care of him. But that's one of the purposes of our marriage. And I would encourage you, there's a purpose. There's a reason why God has brought those two, your two lives together. You are something that didn't exist before. The two of you together are a unit. And God has a reason for that unit and a purpose for its existence. Another principle is that marriage is between a man and a woman. God did not create Adam and Steve. He created Adam and Eve. And he didn't create Adam and Eve and Yvette and Yvonne. He created Adam and Eve. And even though polygamy did occur in the Old Testament, and God seems to not have a lot to say about it in the Old Testament, there's still the shining example of the Garden of Eden, where when he created one man with one woman. And that was his intention. There's been a lot of intention, a lot of people wanting to change that. And we shared a couple of weeks ago, we talked about why won't they listen? When people in our society have abandoned the concept that God's word is what guides our lives, then anything goes. And if society continues down the path it's going now, then all of these things are going to be fair game and will become permitted and allowed. Because it's only the Word of God that says one man to one woman. And if that's not there, then you can have guys get married, you can have girls get married, you can have multiple wives. Anything goes. God's intention was one man and one woman. You see, let me talk to the guys for a minute. How many of you guys have been married long enough to understand that the woman is an alien being? Do you understand that? Totally different from us. Absolutely. Wonderfully different, but totally different. And it's that difference that makes the union what it ought to be. Because it's that union that causes us to have to change and adapt and grow together. And it's an image of humans only being satisfied with the other, that is God. And one of the reasons why I feel like God was so clearly against homosexuality is because it is a symbol. If humanity, man with woman, is a symbol of Christ and the church, what is a man with a man a symbol of? It is a symbol of man. It is a symbol of humanism. It is a symbol of man being satisfied with something like him, woman being satisfied with something like her. It is not the like thing that satisfies the craving in our hearts. It is the other. It is God. It is someone who is so totally different from us. But in that union, we become so much more than we could ever be. And so man has backed off and said, there is no God. God's not around. We can do what we want. But the reason I think Satan pushes it so much is because you can be satisfied with just man. You don't need God. Get him out of the picture. It's just man. It's just man. Humanity is all there is. And so it's between a man and a woman. There's all kinds of condemnations of alternate unions throughout the Scripture. You can take some of those down and leave them or read them for yourself. And then lastly, marriage is a lifelong covenant. It's a covenant. And I want to remind you, I think it may have been last week that we talked about the covenant that was established between Abraham and God in chapter 15 of Genesis. You remember God had made a promise in, I think it's 15:1, where he said to Abram, he said, your children are going to be like the sand of the seashore, or like the stars of the sky. And Abraham's like, how am I going to know this, God? How am I going to know it's really going to happen? And God said, here's what I want you to do. And he told him to take a heifer and a ram and a goat. I think that's what he told him, those three. And then I believe a dove. And he had to take the animals and cut them in half and lay them out on the ground. That was a symbol of the covenant, of entering the covenant. So you take these animals, you take three relatively good-sized animals, cut them in half. It's going to be a gory sight, okay? It's going to be a really bloody, messy thing. And you've got the, a cow, and then the ram, and the goat, and you cut them, and they're bleeding, and then, the bird's there at the end, and it says that the birds came down, and Abraham had to drive them away. Those are like the birds of doubt that come when we're trying to understand these kind of things. But it said that when the sun went down, a smoking fire pot passed between those cut animals. And that was God himself, the smoke and the fire. It was him passing through those pieces. And what it symbolized was, I'm making this covenant with you, Abram. And if I break this covenant, I am willing to become like these animals. That's a covenant. Marriage is a covenant. Marriage is not just, until we fall out of love, let's get married. And let's just say, no, it shouldn't be, until death do us part. It should be until the death of love do us part, or something like that. A covenant is different. You don't just get out of a covenant because you don't feel like it. A covenant is a blood thing. It's serious. And I think I shared with you a couple of weeks back, what amazes me about God is that he passed through the midst of those bloody animals saying, I'm willing to become like them if I break the covenant. He never broke the covenant. And yet he still, because we broke the covenant, he still became like one of them and shed his blood. Just an amazing imagery. But that imagery, I want you to help to understand, that's the covenant of marriage. It's that serious. It's not just, I do, okay, now you're done, and off you go. It's a covenant. It's much more than a contractual thing that we think it is today. So that brings us to the end of what I wanted to share tonight. Any comments or questions or rotten eggs you want to throw or anything like that? All's quiet. That's good. All right, let's bow our heads. Father in heaven, I thank you for my wife. I thank you for giving me the one that was right for me, a helper that was suitable for me. And I thank you for every married person that's in here tonight. And I pray for your strength and your help to each of us, that we might appreciate what you have done by bringing us together with our spouses. And Lord, I would pray also that we might, in our lives, whether we have a human spouse or not, that we might have that relationship of connectedness with you that you modeled for us there in the Garden of Eden. That relationship that you wanted, where you came down in the cool of the evening to fellowship with Adam and Eve. May we have that, and may it bring satisfaction to our hearts. And as we are satisfied with you, may we pour out your love to those people around us. Lord, be with us throughout the remainder of this week and bring us together on the Lord's Day that we can worship you together. In the name of Jesus, we pray. Amen. Have a great week.
Hey, Barry. Can I get on your iPad, can I get the one that starts with eagerness, to admit the need? I wanted the other one, but no.
There is
Hey, if you're
me
gonna
go
bum
find
with
her
it, you
real
gonna take it over there.
Someone go find a person. You just sit right now. You better.
You better.
Find your wife.
Making friends everywhere.
You turned this off, right? Not yet?
Not yet.